Okay, hello.
Hello.
We are live, and this is the What is Horror panel for anybody out there watching. And we have three horror authors plus me today on the panel. Unfortunately, our other author, Nikki Nelson Hicks, had to drop out due to illness, but you can check out her website in the description below, and please do because she writes really good books.
Yep.
Anyway, so I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves if I can remember how to make everybody big here. Because I was supposed to practice that before we went on air, but I did not. Let's see.
Because we were talking.
Yes, we were talking. Okay. Ah, okay. So I'm going to let Angela introduce herself now. I think I figured it out. There, I
Oh,
did. Yay.
this is always where I forget everything. My name is Angela Rico Smith. I write horror and poetry, and I run Space and Time magazine. And that pretty much sums it all up. Oh, and you can go to my website, angelawysmith.com, and that's where all my links are and all of that stuff.
Okay. So now we'll let Elaine introduce
Terrible.
herself.
Hi, I'm Elaine Pascal, and I apologize for my boring background. I have a nice, beautiful horror background like everybody else, but unfortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately, I'm in Florida, but we're still fighting Hurricane Ian. So if I'm in my office with my horror stuff, you would hear a lot of construction. So I'm hiding. You can find out more about me at my website, which is elainepascal.com. I'm also on social media. I'm at Doc Laney on Instagram and Twitter. I write a lot of flash fiction, short stories, but I do dabble in some novels, and I'm also a reviewer. And that's about all.
Okay. And now DL Tillery.
Hello, everyone. I'm author DL Tillery, the Mistress of Horror, and you can find me over on my YouTube channel where I talk about all the things horror. I actually upload every Sunday with something based in horror, except for the first Sunday I talk about some tags or I do something writerly, but everything else is usually horror esque, especially my third Sunday show, which is Mistress Moods and Candlelight, where I review a horror book, horror movie, or horror video game while I put on makeup. So that's one of my funnest shows. And the last Sunday is Lair of the Mistress, where I read my dog poetry. Because I write horror and I call myself the Mistress of Horror, though I dibble and dabble in every genre. I'm married to all the genres, but I'm the Mistress of Horror. So you could catch me writing all kinds of things, but if you want to read some of my work, you can read The Room Within or Fractals, which are my short horror tales that are over on Amazon. And you keep a lookout for my dark fantasy novels coming soon. Stay scared.
Okay. And me. I'm A.F. Stewart, Anita Stewart. I write horror fantasy and I also write horror poetry. And I have a YouTube channel and I also host a horror esque show called Words That Kill, where I interview authors on killing off characters. And that's about me. Okay, so now we're going to get down to the good stuff, which is the what is horror. So we'll go into our first question, and it's how do you define horror? Anybody?
How do you find it?
How
Like,
do you define it?
Find
oh,
it.
define it. Because I was like, it's everywhere.
Yeah, we'll get into
Define.
that later.
I think defining it is really difficult. I mean, we argue back and forth of what is dark and what is horror, and that's something that comes up in the poetry a lot. Is what is the difference between them? And I think it's a lot of it is personal preference. Honestly, what is horrible to you is not going to be horrible to another. Um, so it's really. But I think a lot of it are the same themes. It's something that scares generally everybody. Doesn't have to have blood and gore. I think that's my opinion.
Okay.
Often dead people, but that's kind of like a spice. That's just fun.
Okay, so Elaine, how would you define
If
horror?
I could add on to what Angela was saying, I think the sort of common thing that those of us who enjoy horror, what we enjoy about it, whether it's a book, a film, a TV show, is that we get the embodiment of those anxieties and neuroses that we carry around all day long. So as human beings, we walk around afraid of the weather, afraid of cancer, afraid of these things that we can't fight and beat and deal with. But we have Michael Myers and we have Cocaine Bear, which I have not seen Cocaine Bear, but I'm trying to sound like one of the cool kids. But we have these physical manifestations
that we can sort of project and feel a little bit of catharsis about. And that seems to be something that goes across, whether it's dark, whether it's horror, whether it's whatever. It's sort of this manifesting it, making it something tangible.
Yeah, don't get me started on Cocaine Bear. I haven't
Oh
seen
my
it, but
goodness, I haven't heard of it.
the very premise of Cocaine Bear is going. It's like why? Why?
I'm gonna have to look this up because it sounds hilarious.
It, basically, it's a movie about a bear who ingests cocaine, based on the true story, apparently.
And that's all you
Yeah,
need to
Well,
know.
I mean, with humans around, anything's possible for an
Yeah,
animal to get into. I'm just,
I think I'm more interested in the fact that it's based on a true story.
yeah.
I mean, it's
Okay.
not surprising.
And going on what Elaine said, I think I define horror as the exploration of fear. Um, and so, how would you define horror, DL?
Um, I probably would define it as being a story with creepy tension. That's always like my notice of if it's horror or not. It could be different types of horror, obviously, but like it's a tension, creepiness build up, no matter what kind of monster it is, whether it be a human monster or not in the thing. But it's a atmospheric feeling that I feel when I'm watching a film. If I feel uncomfortable, if I feel like something's over my shoulder, making me feel that even from a film or a book or whatever the case may be for the horror. Also, feel the feeling of defeat in a manner that is an inevitable end. So when someone has managed to do that for the characters in the story, then I definitely feel that it's defining horror in that way where you feeling of defeat that could come. It may not actually end up coming. You could win in the end, but it's just that feeling that I'm being defeated. Hence, start feeling the fear in horror. So that's kind of like what I feel like defines it a bit.
Mm.
That's what romance makes me feel like. I'm just defeated. I'm just defeated from the beginning
It's a very
here.
confusing thing, isn't it?
It's not gonna. So what you're saying is romance is horror. I get that now.
It can be.
For me, it
It
is.
can be.
Romance is
I
hard.
mean, it
Yeah.
can be a horrific thing depending on
Okay,
what happens.
I'm apparently the only one who likes reading romance
No,
novels.
I love romance. Don't get me wrong. I especially I look at it all the time. I love K dramas. Like I only watch like Korean TV, Chinese TV, and Japanese TV because my second language is Japanese. So I only watch a lot of romances. Dramas tend to lean towards the romantic S because it's very popular and it does very well. But no, I love romance. Like definitely, like paranormal romance is like my favorite. So
So this actually leads into an interesting question, which I didn't have on the list. But have you ever written romance into your horror stories?
yes,
No, never.
yes, I've written. I love writing like horror romance, like the two mixes together. I've also written erotica horror, which is a thing actually, and it kind of works because of the whole sexual part of it into the scary. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I've written like paranormal romance horror, and actually erotica horror with romance inclined. So yeah, definitely have. I like actually reading it. I've read some, and a lot of the gothic romance out there, which has horror DNA. It definitely it's definitely decent. I really like Kira Lake. She does write a lot of gothic horror, like gothic romance, and it's definitely got a lot of that creepy tension in it. So,
That's funny you should ask that because I actually am right now. I'm doing Kindle Vella, and I'm
yeah.
doing a paranormal romance. This was me trying to write a romance, and the handsome guy turned out to be a blue incubus who has spent the last decade with a succubus. So he's tired, and then he gets
I would
conjured by a
imagine.
witch for a hot date, and he just really doesn't want to perform. And so this whole story kind of spilled out from that.
Oh, cool. I like
So
that.
yeah, so it is interesting, like not having everybody die, which apparently is you can't have a mantis eat somebody's head in a dream and still call it romance. I found out.
Well, someone told
So
me that, so I had an actual like I'm in the erotic anthology that Aphrodite Lee is running, and of course I wrote something scary esque is one of the things, and it's just some people are like, oh, I don't know about this. Like, there's some murder going on. Like, they kind of like, I don't know if I should be like, one woman said, I can't get my lady
But it's a
thing
sexy
going on.
murder.
I'm about like, I said, well, I would imagine when the murder is going on, you wouldn't be like aroused or anything. But then, like, there's parts where you can be, and then you're uncomfortable the next because someone's head is gone.
Yeah,
So it's kind of
it
like you have
happens.
like, don't read erotic horror if you're not ready for what's about to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah. I once wrote love story where the guy actually had to die to be with the woman he loved because she
Oh,
was a
okay.
banshee.
Oh
Aw,
man. Uh
Nice.
oh.
Yeah, it was
that's
both
sweet.
tragic and sweet at the same time.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can write. It definitely can be done. It's definitely be done.
that's a
Okay,
cute
so
storyline.
yeah, so Elaine, you said you don't put romance in your horror. Why
I
not?
mean, well, now that we're talking about things like, yeah, people murdering each other during sex and things, and maybe like eating their
Anything,
heart out.
nothing's
Yeah,
off
I
the
do
table.
that, but I don't consider
Oh,
that romance. I consider
you may.
that horror. I'm not like I'm the least romantic person on the
Well, it could
planet.
have a
Like,
lot of
yeah,
romance in it, and then not even necessarily go to the sex part of it, because you can have a lot of romance with no sex at all. So you can put romance esque atmosphere in it, but then bad things happen.
Well, yeah, that's like every
Sadly,
vampire novel ever, I think.
I mean,
right.
bad stuff has happened. Like, this is a monster. Like, maybe handsome, maybe pretty, maybe either way. But that don't mean bad things not going to happen, because at
Mhm.
the end of the day, a predator nonetheless. So
Yeah. But then that kind of makes you think, like, say, a story like Beauty and the Beast, that's a
yeah,
romance. It's
yeah,
a
but
monster. It's
dark. Yeah,
not horror though. You know what I mean? Like, I guess
right.
it probably was kind of when it began.
Yeah, it can have
Hmm.
some horror DNA in it because of being it's fantasy really, but
Yeah.
it could
Hmm.
be dark fantasy. I mean, anybody could you could turn Beauty and the Beast. I mean, honestly, all of the fairy tales are
But
really
yeah,
horror. They just
Yes.
turn
but
sweet versions, but they're not the real versions.
Hmm.
technically Beauty and the Beast is a Stockholm syndrome story. So,
I mean,
I mean, really, he kidnaps her and throws her in prison
like, you can't
after
leave
threatening
here,
to murder her
and I'm gonna
Oh
collect
no,
your
father.
car.
worse. Her father gives her to
I
him.
Yeah,
know.
yeah. That's another
It's
version
your.
too. Yeah.
Happy to please daddy and
Mm.
So it's like
go.
I can't leave here. So it's kind of like, is it? Mm-mm.
It's your family duty, honey.
Mm,
Yeah, that time period. Yay.
Yeah, and like DL said, fairy tales, yeah, they're the original fairy tales are very dark.
they're
Because I'm
Ask the
currently
Grimm
writing a
brothers. They
horror.
wrote the so like the Grimm tales is the real, and they're all
Hmm.
twisted. So they
Yeah,
may have turned them pretty in some people's versions, but they started off dark.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
currently writing versions of fairy tales, and yeah, I don't have to go very far to get good
Nope.
material.
It's quite twisted to begin with. Like, if you look at them all and really analyze them,
Oh
even let's
yeah.
take Snow White. Like, there's a witch. She's giving people poison apples over here. Like, it's not far removed. It's just not.
Yeah.
She's in the dark woods. Even Cinderella has like Maleficent, and you got like
Oh
you got all these different characters that are dark to begin with. So there's like
yeah.
that
Mhm.
evil s thing. And then if you put like the castles that are in these places, you're falling right into gothic
Oh
Yeah,
yes.
romance. So
and the original Cinderella story had the sisters cutting off their toes and
Yeah.
body
oh
parts to fit
yeah.
into the
right. So
shoe.
it's like this is twisted. So
Yeah.
they can make
Which
it all
which
nice if they want.
what kind of metaphor is that for women and how what we'll go through to please with our appearances and all that kind of
Yep.
stuff. So
Yep.
Yeah,
somebody, I'm bringing this to you guys. Somebody should write a Cinderella's tale where the stepsisters actually are validated because they're not pretty. They're not the norm of Cinderella that that they're supposed to be, kind of like from their POV.
Yep. The
yeah,
twisted sisters feel the
yeah.
that'd be interesting.
I'd probably write a story about Cinderella where the stepsisters were a murderous duo
Hmm.
killing everyone. So
Yeah.
I think they should kill the town for making them into these,
Hmm.
defining the way they look, and they can't help it. Okay, this
yeah,
if you say I'm not pretty, I'm not
They
going to
use
kill anybody.
Cinderella as the bait to lure in the guys.
Oh,
Using her
you're
as the bait.
oh,
Yeah, it's like she's the pretty one, so we get her to lure the guys into the house, and then we murder him and
I mean,
rob them.
Cinderella is a very complex setting when you think about all the layers of, like, if you bring into our society and issues that we have, then you're really going to look at it because Cinderella being bullied this entire
mhm,
time, and she doesn't think she's pretty. She doesn't really realize it because who's telling her such words? You know what I mean? If you hear the opposite and treat as such, you're not going to think you are. And it's kind of like based to the person who's interested in you if you're pretty or not, because you can say one thing, society can say something, but then what everybody likes is so different. I'm sure somebody that would have liked the sisters that their personalities was freaking ugly and disgusting. That really made them ugly. So at the end of the day,
What
so it's
I'm
very
hearing is
complex.
we need a Cinderella anthology where every story is told from a different. One sister gets a story, another sister gets a story,
Oh,
stepmom gets a story,
Yeah,
townsperson gets a story. We
The prince
get the
gets
exactly.
a
There's so
whole,
many
story.
characters. Yeah,
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 we'll get the
the
whole
prince.
thing.
I
Yeah,
mean, just
very
I mean,
interesting.
yeah, I mean the prince never gets a story in these tales.
Mm-mm.
Really,
no,
he's just sort of there.
Story.
they're
He's
not the
there.
focus.
He's there as the token love interest and hero rescue guy.
Yeah, and I
Mm-hmm.
mean, then when people break down like Disney stuff from back in the get go, a lot of people looked at it in one way and was like, well, you got the damsel in distress and you got the woman being saved and that type of thing. No, but if you really look at it, the main characters are the women.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you try to decide, like the prince, yeah, oh yeah, he comes in and saves a blah, but he's not the big deal. Like no matter how
Mm-mm.
which one you pick, the female is the main character. So Disney has
Yeah,
always done
And the
that.
main villain. It's
yeah,
usually the mother or the
Yeah, so instead of
stepmother.
them just saying it's
It's
like a
always the
female could be
yeah.
either
villain.
The
way.
godmother.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yep,
and if you
yep,
look back on the original stories, a lot of these were warning tales of,
yeah,
yeah, this is the
Mm,
danger out there, people,
yep.
pay attention,
Pay
sort of
attention.
thing. So that's why
Yep,
these women were in danger, why they were damsels in distress, because
yep,
yeah.
it was a warning story for women,
yep. Like
watch
keep a
out for the
lookout. Pay
yeah, watch
attention.
out for the creepy guys. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
Well, or if daddy gives you to a monster, it's okay. You will fall in love eventually because he'll buy you a library.
Everybody's not bad type of situation, I guess, with the beast. Like he had complicated issues. Like,
yeah.
I'm not fixing
Yeah.
you.
Although I really don't know what the Bluebeard tale and the robber bridegroom
He's trying
variation
to
on
teach.
that was supposed to tell us, because it's like, don't marry a serial killer. I think that should be pretty obvious.
Well, some of us
Try to
might need
avoid it.
to have learned. I mean, some of us just might need a little bit of
Some of us might
interest.
not know. That's always fun. Like, oh, my
Yeah, I mean,
husband was doing
if the
what?
guy has had like 6 wives who have mysteriously disappeared,
That might be a
don't
sign.
marry
Yeah, but
That
him.
look at
might
those
be a
women who write the
sign.
serial killers in prison and
This
write
is
them
for
love letters and marry them when they're in prison. I mean, yeah, they need that lesson.
Yeah,
Well, there's
I
people like
think
that. They can't learn a lesson. They're interested.
yeah, I think that's a lot of it is that curiosity. I was at a party last year. I'm not going to say which party because I don't want to like point the finger at anybody. And there was a guy that was, very socially awkward and came across as what we would say is creepy. And then I said something about, yeah, I need to get home. And he's like, oh, I'll give you a ride. And I was like, he's so creepy.
Like,
Okay.
no,
Like, I want to get to know you better. Like, this, not in a love, I'm married. I'm happily married. It was not like that. It was just like, I would like to talk to you because who are you? You are off the
like
wall.
stranger danger.
And
That's
then somebody pulled me aside and said, we don't know him. Like, we don't know how he showed up at this party and stuff. And I was
well,
like,
that's parties for you.
so, yeah, so I
yeah.
probably
Don't get in the
Making
murder
shouldn't.
good
van, Angela.
decisions.
Don't get
Making
in the
good
murder van,
decisions.
Angela.
Yeah, making
But
good decisions is the thing.
that's what I actually said. My husband would say this is a bad idea. Damn it.
Bad idea.
But what is in the murder van? That's the thing. That's
Yeah.
the real question is what do they keep in
Those
there?
white vans pull up next to you. Don't park next to them.
Mhm.
I'm just saying.
Lots of life lessons here.
It is, man. You gotta keep a lookout. I keep a lookout. I'll be like,
Oh, I
move
do too.
suspicious. Like
Yeah.
everybody, hey, I made it through to my 38th year, with 39 this year. I made it safely and I've been careful. I didn't go to parties. I don't leave my drink sitting around so people can just put stuff in it. I don't drink liquor. I've never tasted it. But if you do go to a party, because nothing wrong, people do want to do that.
Oh
Listen, don't leave your drink just sitting. Don't let somebody else give you a drink because you don't know what they put in that. Like,
Yep.
don't go home with strangers. Did you come with this person? You know what I mean? Like that type of just know where the exits are.
yeah. Mm.
But you see, that's the difference. I'm going to bring it back to women in horror. I had struggled for years with thinking, I just want to be a horror writer. I don't want to be a woman horror writer.
Yeah, just be a
And
horror.
then I realized how much of what I write is based on my vulnerability as a woman. I check the back seat before I get in the car. My husband does not. Never
You
once has he
should.
thought to check the back seat. I will not get in a car unless I've checked the back seat.
Gotta look in the
Like DL
vehicle.
said, if that white van's there, oh hell no,
I'm not parking there. I'm
I'm
moving.
parking in the next state. I'm
I'm
nowhere near
moving.
that van. Like, but that's our reality. We're
Yeah.
constantly aware of that vulnerability and that no, I'm not going to get in your car. I don't want to get in an elevator alone with a man I don't know. Men don't have to think about those things. So that does our genitalia, our reproductive organs, do
Yeah,
make
you're
it
gonna kind of think about it when you're writing this. Might not be able to help it in some cases.
right.
Yeah, because I mean, I think we all do stuff that men don't do. Because, like, I put
Yeah,
my car keys in between my fingers.
In your fingers,
If
yeah.
I, yeah, just in case I have to punch
might
somebody in
need
the
to
face,
use
I'm
that
going
as
right
a
for the
The
eye.
weapon.
phone's in the
Right?
other hand, ready to
Yeah,
go. If
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I've got the keys between my fingers. I'm going right for the eye. I
yeah,
mean, it's things like this that women think about, but
yeah.
men don't because they don't have
They
to
don't
deal with
necessarily
it.
have to. I mean, you got some men that may think like protecting myself type of situation if they go out, but it's not going to be the normal setting. It is like maybe walking along. Not in my family, obviously, but the guys in my family are very like on. Like I'm looking. They're the types that look in the vehicle when they get in the vehicle. They're the types that like I know where the exits are. I'm not. I'm very suspicious of a person if I'm getting on an elevator. So they think like that part because my mother is the type to think like that, coming from security mind and settings and stuff like that. But the norm for females is to, well, I would hope you have to really be careful of everything and look for the dangers that could be around the corner because you're a female. So sad reality that it is.
I'm going to say it's a wonder I'm alive at 53. I'll just, I'll just leave it there. I never do any of that. And if I see the murder van, I'm like looking through the windows. Is there really duct tape in there? Is that what you
Is
think?
there a
Like,
rope in there?
yeah. Can I
They're
just
offering
interview you
Angela
for just a
candy and
second?
they're like, hey
Well,
Angela, here's
all the
some candy.
kidnappers aren't obvious.
I'll
Some
be
of
in
them
the
drive
van. She's
cars.
like, okay.
Yeah, well, you don't have to give me candy. I just want to look. Okay, I'm just going to look. I
Yeah,
just
I'm
want to see
curious. What's
what
up?
do you.
What's going on in there? What's going on? Oh my.
Yeah.
Never been in a murder van. I'm just saying.
Shoot.
Not that I'm volunteering. Anybody who watches this, I do like life. I do enjoy living very much. I just want to see.
Now she sees a murder van, she could be like,
Hmm.
Okay, so we'll pull it back a bit to the topic of writing. As much fun as this is, but I mean, we've been talking about subgenres of horror. So, what is your favorite subgenre of horror that you write in?
For
mine
writing or for
is
film or both or
probably all of maybe. I guess because horror is kind of like universal, so maybe all of it. I would imagine all of it. I mean, I'm like dark fantasy being a subgenre because it dark fantasy is make it made into dark fantasy because of the horror aspects of the dark, and then gothic obviously because again, it's not a gothic without the horror DNA in it. And then supernatural. A lot of people forget about the supernatural aspects of that being horror because of the creatures that come from horror that are in supernatural stuff. Rather in writing, we do call it paranormal. Funny that. Um, and then a sci-fi, which is a run up for me in that, but its DNA is thick with horror. I don't really know how you even write it without it. So, but my favorites are the ones at the top.
I like a lot of those as well. I like cosmic, bizarro. I love a creature feature for a movie. I love lost footage in movies. I'm a big 80s slasher film girl because that was when I was young and impressionable. So it's very nostalgic for me, but I also like the gothic and those other things too.
I kind of go all over the place too. It really just depends on what, like, if I'm consuming, it's what mood I'm in. I'm really impressed though if you can pull off horror, like Smile, the movie Smile.
Yeah, that's a
There's
good
like
one.
almost no special effects or anything, but that creepiness on that,
Yep,
probably
it's
one of the
very well
scariest
done.
movies I've seen. But
Yeah,
and then writing it, it just really I do gravitate a lot towards science fiction horror, but it really just depends on the story.
yeah.
So, I guess I'm more the specialist of the group. because I stick mostly to horror fantasy or historical horror. So I don't branch out. I have branched out a little bit into the sci-fi, although my serial story on Kofi is kind of stalled a little bit for various reasons. But I left them um, on the sci-fi ship being kidnapped by aliens. So maybe I should have had.
Yay, sci-fi. It's always very scary. But I think cosmic horror, if I only could pick one, then I would have to pick cosmic because of the unknown. That's always my favorite kind. Like I like the unknown. That's more scary to me.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
dabbled a little bit in the cosmic sort of Lovecraftian thing too, but
Mm-hmm.
mostly flash fiction in that area.
Yep. Hey, when it's like done and you real scared, you know what happened?
I'm working very hard to make paddleboard horror a thing because I wrote a story about paddleboard horror, and now I was just talking to a publisher. We were thinking about, really just branching out because that's my hobby and making that, which I guess would be cosmic because of oceans and all that kind of thing too. But
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah,
that
join
sounds
me,
like an anthology.
join me, ladies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, explain this a little bit more, this paddleboard horror. I mean, I'm getting a kind of a Jaws vibe off of it,
You
but
could do a Jaws or any kind of ocean creature. You could also do like, what are these people doing on the board? Are they
Yeah,
taking bodies out to get rid of them? They cooking up some meth.
Lovecraft.
What are they doing? Making zombies? I mean, that's my zombie escape plan is to get on my paddleboard and just go. So that's
Hmm.
my. So there's a lot you
Yeah,
can do with it.
yeah, a dead
yeah. The
body in the middle
paddleboard
of the
could be a
ocean on a
body.
paddleboard.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
could be on a body paddling. Like that is the paddleboard.
There you go,
Yeah.
Oh,
Angela.
that's an interesting idea.
There you go.
Oh, and then you
Yeah.
make it sexy horror because you're on the body.
You
Okay,
can add
I'm
some Titanic in there, you
Yeah, no,
know.
yeah. There's an erotic horror
There you go.
story in there somewhere. I am guessing.
We can make it happen. We can make it happen.
we'll stop there.
That's funny.
Okay, so have you done any mashups, like genre mashups with horror, like that aren't necessarily horror with a little added genre, but the two separate genres squished into one?
Yeah, I've done
I've done
that.
historical. Would you call cosmic like a mashup? To me, cosmic is sort of a mashup in its nature.
Yeah, I guess it could be. It is
Yeah, I
kind
guess
of a separate subgenre in itself too, a little bit.
yeah, it is.
I like to try to do science fiction horror mashup, but I'm always concerned. I have that imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm not sciencey enough, and some reader's going to go, "That's not how that works," and kind
And
of.
be like, yeah, well, tell them good luck figuring out how it works since all of the space stuff is theory at the end
Did
of the
you watch
day. So
Star
I can do whatever
Trek?
I want
Yeah,
out
yeah,
there. I'm just telling you, like,
yeah. That's why they call it fiction, people.
Mhm.
exactly, like, calm down. I can make up whatever I want. Like,
Yeah, use your imagination.
exactly. So, like, no, do what you want to do. It's face, please.
Yeah.
They just asked for me to open a whole jar of stuff. Like,
Hmm.
Okay, we got a question here from the audience and
that's
SD
me.
Houston. What makes dark fantasy like horror? So, what basically
Well,
defines the two of them as separate?
I would say first off, the whole genre coming around of dark fantasy, it's just taking fantasy and the dark is horror. So if you write dark fantasy, it's the again tension, it's the villainy of it in the story, how the atmosphere works. A lot of the stuff that goes on in it is kind of have dark undertones, or it could be heavily instead of undertone based. The dark part of that whole title is really speaking of the horrific things that will occur in this story. So it's not just the regular fantasy, because when you separate fantasy by itself, everyone knows about what fantasy is. People start thinking like fairies and elves and things like that. Once you throw the dark in with it, there's going to be a twist. There's going to be the twistedness happening. There's going to be, like I said, the atmosphere is going to change to a darker tone, which gives it the horror DNA. So you're pretty much mixing horror and fantasy together, hence born dark fantasy.
Yeah, and there's a certain limit where you can go with dark fantasy as opposed to horror too, because
Yep,
once you cross the line in dark fantasy, you get into grimdark,
yep.
and it ceases to
Got
be
to
dark
balance it.
fantasy.
You got to
Yeah.
balance. It's like when you fuse something together, because dark fantasy became its own
Mm.
genre, pretty much. You have to keep a balance. Like if you go too far, people will be like, I don't feel the fantasy anymore. I feel only scared. Like I only feel the horror. So you
Yeah.
do have to watch the balance on it.
Yeah, because if you go too far when you're writing dark fantasy, you either slide into horror or you slide into grimdark,
Yep.
which
Look,
is
and she's
fine
like,
because
oh my god, grim dark question mark.
Yeah.
that's actually one type of horror I have not written yet is grimdark,
Yeah.
um, because grimdark is so dark. I mean, it's kind of like the fantasy version of splatterpunk.
Yeah.
It's
So
like you're trying to romance me and get me to try this Grimdark
Yeah.
because
Grim dark, I
okay,
guess you'd be
I'm
doing that
there.
same way, Sam,
well,
because it's
actually,
yeah.
grimdark can be very interesting, but it's just like there is no hope in grimdark. It is just
Mm,
dystopian. It's like I've kind
Yeah.
of like you take the dystopian elements of sci-fi and you mix them with dark fantasy, and you got grimdark.
so like
I,
2020 with elves.
Yeah, kind of.
you're not wrong.
Yeah,
You're not
if the
wrong.
elves all had axes and were murdering everybody.
Yeah. I
As
think
D said, is that line clear? I think it's people can slip into the grim dark if they're not careful. Most people don't because a lot of people may not, be in that mindset and that headspace
Mhm.
to go that dark. You kind of have to
mhm,
let go of some of your thought process to go that dark. You have to
mhm,
let go of your compass possibly to go that dark. So not everyone is going to cross the line to begin with. Most of the time people
mhm.
can stay pretty balanced with it. If anything, they would slip more into fantasy before they slip into the grim dark by mistake. It's probably quite on purpose in most cases because of the grimness that you have to
Yeah.
imagine. You know what I
I
mean?
think if you've slipped into the grimdark, you're pretty much aware that you've slipped into the
Right.
grimdark.
This is going
Yeah.
too far.
Yeah,
Like I
it's like
already
if
know.
everybody is getting killed in your book
And
as
there's
your
no hope
hero progresses
whatsoever.
along his little quest,
We're
then
getting
you've
grim
got
here.
into grimdark.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that I want to ask you guys. I know I'm not the asker here, but I'm going to slip in here with a question. Just, do you think? Because I think of everything as horror in a way. It's just on a spectrum. So some things like you've got Romeo and Juliet.
Mhm.
That has horror in it. To me, that's a horror. It's a romantic light horror. Or Lord of the Rings, talking about fantasy. There's like some pretty dark stuff that happens in there. So to me, I like to think everything is horror, but it's just how far over on the dark side are you? You know,
Yeah.
'cause even
It's
like
not you're not
cartoons are
wrong.
horror.
It's
You know,
because horrific
cartoons are
things
horror.
happen. I think that's
Mm-hmm,
probably why. And like Romeo and Juliet is tragic. So
mm-hmm,
without the tragic, then the no horror. So it's kind of like that. And of course, Lord of the Rings have a lot of dark things going on in that. Of course, fantasy in itself will, especially with the villains and things like that and the bad stuff that can occur. So it's going to be some horror in most things because of
mm-hmm.
the stuff you have to make your characters go through in order for it to
Yeah.
be interesting, which would be horrific for them. Like we all go through horrible things in life in
Mm-hmm.
most cases. I mean, if you manage to not somehow by the time you
Yeah.
pass away, then I mean that's amazing. I don't know where you've been living. Was no, you don't. I don't know how you could not. So in most cases, I think there will always be some horror
Yeah.
in almost everything. So you
Yeah.
So
have you bring a good
that's the answer to this panel. What is horror? Everything.
Everything.
you can find it in everything. I mean,
Yeah. I think
that
most
would be because I know some people may not like it, but there is no light without darkness. It's inherently like there's a balance to things. Like you have to have like if there was just light, there's not going to be people say, well, you take that theory they have what they say, you take light, one little bit of light, and you put it in darkness and it dispels it. That's not true. It's
yeah.
not true. Like it sounds nice, but it's not true. Like there's
But it also
shadows.
wouldn't be interesting. I mean, think about like, would you watch a movie where two people are just sitting around going, "I am so happy. I'm so happy too."
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
we're
gonna be
both
looking for
so
something bad
happy.
to
Like
occur. I'm be like,
nothing's
some
happening, right?
utopian kind of thing going down, and only in utopian stuff with twisted stuff will occur because there's no way this is going to happen because it had to be some bad stuff going on for you to get here, and that's going to just come out. So don't trick me with your happy.
Okay. So Margaret has led us into one of our points here. So we're going to put her comment. In. I think horror is more about disgust and suspense than just fear, which is suspense and thriller and mystery. Now, this leads us into what are some common misconceptions about horror? Because I slightly disagree with that comment, Margaret.
Because suspense and thriller are under the horror banner. Like I know people may not realize that. Now I always say some people because thriller to me is like weak horror. So I get like, and when it gets to human, I call it human horror. When humans are killing humans, I'm not as interested. I'm like, okay,
That
Yeah.
happens.
I'm not. It happens for real. Also, in my mindset, if some human attacks me, I'm fighting back. So I'm not as afraid as I could be if my felt more like I'm not going to win. I'm going to do my best to win if it's another human because we're both humans. Now, if I have something that's not, like me, that is another type of being, I feel more afraid because I don't know what I could do to this thing. I don't know what's the I don't know what it's going to do to me. It's also this fear. So
Mhm.
thriller is still under the horror banner, even though it's more like milk toast horror in that way because it's a little bit less. It's more like you'll see a lot of more human esque horror in thriller banner, though you can see other stuff. And suspense is also under. A lot of people just don't realize it. Again, as Angela said, like horror is almost in everything if you really dig deep and look at it. So yeah, I would disagree with that one too, probably
Yeah,
because of that.
I disagree with it because I don't think you can have horror without fear.
Yeah, that
Right.
that's the
Because
tension. Like you're not doing it right.
yeah, fear is intrinsic to the horror genre.
It's important. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the disgust part. Now, there are disgusting things. I'm not sure if that's exactly what she meant by that, but in horror, and there is disgust in horror, but you can have horror stories that have absolutely nothing
Mhm.
disgusting in them.
Yeah, no gore, and
Yeah.
it's just
Right.
it's
Yeah, because I
creepy,
mean,
scary.
psychological horror can be some of the most frightening and disturbing
Literally,
horror,
yes.
and weird
Mhm.
fiction can be the
No
same
gore at
way.
all.
Mm-hmm.
And there's absolutely no gore. It's all in your head, or it's all
Use your
in the
imagination.
Mhm.
character's head. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
I just sort of subscribe to the Stephen King theory of like try to scare everybody. If you're not able to scare them, gross them out. Like that's your
Mhm.
last
He's like,
resort.
let me go to this. Let me. It's not working. Let me gross you out there.
Yeah. But even that's a point of view because, like, Interview with the Vampire has a lot of very graphic scenes, but
Yeah.
it is, I would say, very attractive the whole way through. There is no disgust. And maybe this is a me
Yeah.
thing, I should admit,
But
but
it's still horror
yeah.
though.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah.
horror. It's technically disgusting because there's gore, lots of gore.
Yeah.
But Anne Rice made the gore pretty.
Romantic. She just
Yeah.
that's what she did all the time. So I mean, and that I know we were talking about the misconceptions. I think one of the misconceptions that people have with horror is that they forget easily about the beings and stuff that are related to horror. So
Hmm.
if the film or the book or whatever is made around said beings, people may forget, especially if they've been romanticized. A vampire movie, no matter how they want to slice a vampire, is still horror. Like it doesn't
Hmm.
matter. Like if they want to romanticize, all of Anne Rice vampires are mostly more romanticized. It's still horror.
Yeah, they
Like
can
it
sparkle,
doesn't
but they're
matter.
still
It gets
vampires.
stronger. It's
I was
still
gonna
predator,
say when they
right?
sparkle in the sun and play
That's what
baseball,
I was
that's where
so
I draw the
funny.
line. I'm like, I'm out.
Right.
I'm out.
There are people like they're playing baseball and they're
No, I
like they're
can't.
sparkling. I'm like, first off, she didn't even make that. That's been a thing. If you know Vampire Lord, like the diamond skin and the hardness
Mm,
because of the deaths. Of course, their special effects wasn't the best. I'm not gonna lie. But like that's not new. She didn't even make it. Like so it's been around for a long time, but a lot of people were like really leaned in on that. Like, I don't like my vampires to sparkle. And I was like, whatever to that. Like, who cares? He's still gonna rip your throat out. Like,
Hmm.
I don't. That's why it's the trick. Like to be beautiful. It's still a predator. It's a creature. It's a
Hmm.
monster. It's still scary, but it doesn't want you to know that you should be scared. Hence, how it gets you and eats you. So
Hmm.
vampires have always been kind of like that, beautiful and alluring. Hence, why they can, lure you closer. But then it's a monster that can tear you apart, pretty much. So I think people forget vampires for one. There's a lot of different creatures that could be pulled into fantasy quite easily. And then misconceptions of it not being horror related. A lot of people look at horror things, and
Hmm.
again, Angela's point, a lot of things will be horror that people don't realize because they
Hmm.
just don't connect the two. Just like you know, Margaret said about asking that question. Like, is
Mhm.
this with a fear and being related? Like, I don't really see how it's not horror without some kind of fear. There is some kind of fear going to be connected to
Oh
it
yeah.
Yeah,
either way.
okay.
So
So Margaret says you need fear for horror. Doesn't mean everything with fear is horror. And I disagree with that for the very simple reason because she says down here that her cat, Bean, is that the right comment? Yeah. Bean is a land predator, but he doesn't scare me. Of course he doesn't. But that doesn't mean
He's
he
not a
can't.
he's a
Yeah,
predator for something else.
the
Yeah.
He's
chances
not
of
your
your cat
predator.
killing you are not great, but they're never zero.
Now, if your
I
cat
always
was
remind
a
people of that. It's
larger cat,
never not going to happen.
like a
well,
Yeah.
larger cat, lion or a tiger, then you would be afraid
Yeah,
because he's a
because
even
predator
that
that can
cat
kill you.
though, even the cat that you know, that's your pet, that you wake
Mhm.
up every
It would
day, if
turn
they
into
start, well, if they just start acting
right.
I was
Oh
going to say
yeah,
abhorrent, but if they start acting differently
yeah.
and the lighting is just right and there's been a knock at the door but nobody's there and a weird phone call and then your cat
Yup.
starts staring at you weird or singing, you know how they do. Your
Yeah,
cat
they
is
do
suddenly
that.
scary. You just haven't been lucky enough to be scared by your cat yet.
That's true.
Mhm.
They can lead to, and cats are the guardians of hell. I'm just saying.
Hmm.
yeah, and the best horror is when you take something very
Hmm.
innocent and very
Turn it
sweet and
scary.
turn it on its head and make it the most scary thing
Scariest thing
Oh
possible.
yeah.
ever. And this can be done.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine? So your cat that you, it's your cat that you know, and your cat is sitting on the counter, and you hear a tap on the table behind you or something, 3 knocks, and so you turn around and you're like, "What is that?" It's a normal day. The sun is shining, and then your cat starts tracking something you can't see,
Yeah,
walking
Mhm.
that.
across the kitchen, and then
Yeah.
hisses. Now your cat is freaking scary.
Yeah, he's freaking out. Like, what's he saying?
Yeah, he sees something I don't.
What's here with us?
Where's the murder van? We need to look inside.
Margaret said, but that leads to disgust for me. I don't know what she was linking to. I think I missed something.
Maybe that the cats are eating the dead bodies. Because Shannon was saying in previous comments
Well,
about, if she dies, she's afraid of her kid's going to eat her. So
hey, that's very
that's actually
possible.
happened too. So,
It
I
has
mean,
happened.
I just
Animals, I
downloaded a
mean,
book from a mortician who the book title is called "Well, My Cat Eat My Eyeballs." It's true facts about when you die. So I'm very
yeah, I
excited to get
mean,
into
the
that.
animals being there, they could very well eat you. Just don't be there too long. I'm just, oh my goodness.
yeah, okay. I'm trying to get back on track on what we were actually supposed to be talking.
Since we talk about the misconceptions of horror
Okay.
that people have.
Okay. So, what is your favorite thing about writing horror? Why do you write it? Why
Oh,
do you like it?
I'll let someone
Because
else
you
go
get to
first.
experience things that you probably don't want to experience, but you can project your issues onto it and deal with it. And like I said, I've got my zombie apocalypse plan. I've got my purge plan. If we have a purge night, I'm ready. I am in control of my environment now, thanks to writing horror. But it
Mhm.
just lets me dabble and play with things that I probably wouldn't even really want in my real life, but it's a safe playground for that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting that you say that too, Elaine, because they did a study during 2020, and they found out that the people that were fans of horror were the most resilient. We were the healthiest mentally of all of the genres, like the romance, because we role play this
Yeah.
all the time. I mean, when 2020 hit and everybody's like, "Oh, it's a pandemic," everybody's response that I knew was like, "Oh, like in such and such story,
Yeah,
except that with this
exactly.
character instead of that character." Oh, like the zombies were like this, but not that.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. We
Oh
got
yeah,
this
I was leaping
storyline.
through my plans. I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I got this.
Yeah.
I got this one." Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
It's
because we've
like, yeah,
been
I know what to do.
exercising.
I wrote
yeah,
this. Sort
We've
of
yeah,
been
thing.
exercising
exactly.
this whole time, like our minds. We
Hmm.
are exercising it the whole time when we're watching horror. It's like you're watching someone else go through something horrific, and that's why we really look at it too, because we don't have to go through it, but we get to watch it occur. So we're kind
Hmm.
of exercising our minds in that set. So when something like that would happen, we kind of like, oh, I've been practicing this for a minute, so
It's
it's
role
not a
play.
big
Horror
deal,
is
you
role
know.
play for life.
It really is. So
Yeah. And
um,
then the other thing everybody was saying is, dang it, I was writing that. Like I'm halfway through this
Yeah.
story that just
this
happened
is
to us in real
happening for
life.
real. What?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
This question shows Margaret does not read horror. Where in horror does it tell you how to deal with social isolation? No. She's
Well,
obviously never read a horror book set on an abandoned farm, an abandoned house, an
Oh,
yeah, it's
all the
like
abandoned
same thing.
time.
anything.
Social
Misery,
isolation,
being
yeah.
stuck in
Like,
a well. You
because
know,
it's a
like
type of fear. Now, when you think
Yeah,
about horror, it's like people. That's another misconception. People hear horror, they only think about monsters. They only will think about the scary monsters and beasts and things like that, which is fine. But they forget that it's a wide array of horror.
yeah.
And as a person who writes horror and watched horror my whole life, you really do have to realize, like I mentioned, thriller. That is horror. That is horrible situations. If it has something, if you look up the definition of horror, of horrific, horrible, it could be in anything. It's a lot of different situations. A lot of different things can occur to be under that banner. So when you think about horror, you need to open your mind more of what horror could be, because
yeah.
it is more
Yeah.
than likely
And in terms of social isolation, one of my favorite like
pretty
tropes or
scary.
subgenres, I don't know what you would call it, is sort of a dystopia where
Yeah.
like Stephen King's Under the Dome, where like everyone's kind of
Mhm.
like trapped, but they're trapped together in a little tiny group, and you see how
Yeah.
society de-evolves and everyone
Yeah.
kind of like, and you and it's again, it's us sort of role playing and being like, well, who would I be? Would I be the leader, or would I be the one who secretly sells everybody out so that I can be, queen of the damned or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Anita that I think so much of our horror deals with
Mhm.
social isolation.
It
Oh
definitely
yeah.
does. So I
That's
mean,
it's actually like a ground rule of a lot of horror. You know, you've
yeah,
got socialite. You are alone, like the Blair Witch Project. You're
yeah,
alone in the woods. You're
yeah.
alone in your house. You're alone in
Was
the
it?
basement.
What's
You're
the
alone.
one? That cabin one? Where they like roll that weird stuff on them. Like they had to be isolated
Oh
in
yeah.
that cabin because it would spread. Things like
Mhm.
that. So it's definitely that's a main thing in horror. Actually,
Mhm.
isolation,
And back
Yeah.
in the
social
day, your phone
isolation.
didn't work. Everyone would pick up the phone and the landline wouldn't work.
Yeah,
It was
Yeah,
like
and you get
social
new,
separated. That's
isolation.
how
now
everybody
the
dies,
cell
right?
phone doesn't
Yeah.
work
Yeah,
or
and
it
then if you
broke.
bring up that in Smile that came out,
Oh,
you kind of had to socially isolate if you didn't want to kind
Oh
of
yeah.
die in that, because if you
hmm
pass that curse on, then that's it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like it definitely is like a main thing. One of the things I like writing about horror is besides like after it gets to the writing part, is possibly creating a story that gives people nightmares. Like I don't know why I like that. Like that means I did my job. Like they're thinking about it in their sleep. Like it really affected them. So I really like that. I like scaring people in stories. Like I really do. Like make them feel uncomfortable and tension, because they will remember that. And if they have a nightmare, like I did my job. When I heard somebody have a
well,
nightmare read my book, I was like, yes,
you're
I
being
did my
nice. You're
job.
helping them role play
I
to
am.
be
I'm
empowered.
helping them practice. You know what I mean? But I do like writing a lot of my stuff from the monster perspective. A lot of my horror is from the beast or the monster's perspective. So I really do. That's one of my favorite things to do in horror, is to write from the monster.
Okay, so now we'll go on to the tropes of horror since we've already talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, the truth.
What are your favorite tropes and which ones don't you like to use when
I
you're
love
writing?
I love Final Girls. I love monster mythology. I taught many, many courses on monster mythology at the university level. So I'm a real stickler for the monster mythology. Um, the ones I don't like, and they're mostly film ones, there are no tropes that bother me so much in writing, but I don't like in a film how there's always a full moon constantly, even if days, weeks have gone by. It's always a full moon. It's not. It can't be. And
That
I
can't
just
happen.
love
But something really is
how
going on.
what bothers me now are the people who don't have a cell phone on them, because I'm like, come on, I'm old and I always have my cell phone on me. You're telling me the youngins don't have that cell phone surgically
You're like,
attached?
what year is this written in? Is this a time set piece?
Yeah, I mean, come on. I can see not having cell phone service, but not
Or a
having the
or a dead
phone.
battery.
Or a dead battery? Like
Yeah,
that makes sense. You're
or
right.
they could stick them in some kind of like get away from the technology retreat where the cell
hmm
phones were not allowed to be brought with them.
Yeah, that would make
Yeah.
sense.
That
I
would
Yeah.
mean,
make
Or
there
you
sense.
there are
drop
ways to
it.
work around it
Or drop
without
it. You
being
lost
stupid.
it.
Yeah, you lose it.
They have you kind of have to write it in, but I think a lot of times in films and maybe even books, they forget about that connection because that's kind of like when we have people read stuff before it comes out. We like somebody's like, "Wait, what happened to their cell phone?" You're like, "Oh
Right.
shoot, I forgot
Or
to
why
say
don't
they
they have their
dropped it."
car key and then when they find it, the engine won't turn over? You know, like
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
those types.
come
I get
on.
that. I get that. I think one of my favorites is the abandoned place. I really like abandoned places. The cursed artifact. I like the cursed artifact. And seeing things in mirrors like that always is like I really do like those. My least favorite would be like the one last scare because it didn't even happen more than likely. I don't really like that. It's like it ended and then they like we gotta write this part just to mess with you. Like, but I want it to have happened. Now, if you mess with me and it happened, but when you just do it and then we find out when the sequel comes out, that was just blah, guys. We was just messing with you. I'm like, really? Okay, I'm lame. Um, and then splitting up like and whenever they do it, I'm laughing. I'm like, who does this? Like something bad already happened, and you're like, yeah, let's all go down a separate hallway, guys.
Yeah.
Like for no reason whatsoever. Like we'll find the exit. I'm like, we can do that together. We can cover more ground. Listen, if you're all dead, we're not covering anything, you know. So
Yeah.
I that's always stupid and annoying, but I get it. In horror, some things happen. Like I did write a guy who had to pull the flashlight out, and he went on up because people do that, which is like, leave. What are you doing? You know, but it has to happen. I get it.
Okay. So Joe sort of says you asked if you're an Evil Dead fan with
Heck yeah, I am. Love the classics.
Okay, so I'm like DL. I like the isolated settings, and I also like historical sort of gothic writing gothic horror too. And I'm gonna probably annoy Elaine with this, but I am not a fan of the final girl trope.
That's okay.
I mean, I get it, and it's classic and everything. I just it's like yeah. I mean, no, I'm not a fan of it. I just prefer the women just to band together and become feral people attacking.
That's good too.
That's funny.
Uh,
Oh my. Love it.
yeah, I
Okay,
don't
so
think I really write to tropes much. I'm sitting here trying to think of tropes that I've written to, um, and I can't really think of anything. And then as far as not liking tropes, I don't think I have anything that I don't like necessarily. I don't like when you see the monster too soon, like Babadook. I'm sorry, I'm going to
Yeah.
complain because I was so excited by that movie. I was loving it, and then they show the monster, and it's a Muppet. Don't show me. I was actually kind of scared before, or It
Tease them a
Follows.
bit. Yeah, it's
You
follow.
know,
Oh,
like
Yeah.
where does the point? This is and hyperventilating too much. I will say that. That's from It
oh.
Follows. The monster is coming. There's something happening.
You'd be like, "Why are you breathing? It's going to find you!" Like,
Yeah, like 5 minutes later. You could have just drove off by this point. Just like start the car, drive away. I
we
mean,
all
it's
can
on the
like pick
roof.
some things that's just like really annoying to us when we see it. But
Yeah,
it all has its place. But it's still like this is what are they doing here?
yeah. Let's split up and hyperventilate in separate parts of this house. It's
It's so
okay.
important. It's what we
yeah,
need to
yeah.
do.
Confuse the monster. He won't know who to get.
Who's breathing the loudest?
Yeah, that does kind of bother me too when they do dumb things for no reason other than that they're dumb things and they need someone to get killed off.
Yeah, and like horror, we know like B horror exists, and we know a lot of them to throw a lot of the tropes in. We love those too. Like we we do. We know that those are like got a lot of tropes in them, but we kind of like them to be in it sometimes, so we can laugh at them. Like even
Mhm.
with horror, sometimes we just laugh at like you being so silly, but
Yeah,
it's
it's like
good though.
yeah, watch a movie and think, don't go down in the basement. You know
Yeah.
they're going down in the basement.
Like don't go. Yeah, they're going in the basement, y'all. We know something bad about to happen.
Yeah, it's like
Watch
Whoever's
a
wearing the white
cheesy
shirt.
film.
Do you like it when you watching a movie or watch it with someone and they're trying to get ready because they watch horror all the time? They try and get ready for what's about to happen, but it then gets them anyway.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love it. Oh my god.
okay. So have any of you ever gotten criticized or had your genre put down because you write horror?
Yes. When I was in college, I was a creative writing major, and I had a professor who pulled me aside and said, "I want to save you from being a horror writer. You're too good of a writer." And he specifically said, I would hate to see you end up in like Alfred Hitchcock magazine or Twilight Zone or something like that. And I'm like,
I'll be like, dream come true.
Still my
Right?
beating
Like,
heart.
I was like, oh, be still
you
my
you
heart.
possibly know how to get in on there?
And it
Like,
shocked me because that was I've been writing horror since I could, like, I begged my parents to teach me how to write so I could write horror stories. I've been doing it. That's what comes out. And I was shocked that anyone wouldn't want to be a horror writer. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, that's been my dream my whole entire life. Why would you not want to be a horror writer?
Yeah. He basically said, don't pursue the two things that pay well.
Yeah.
Because literary does not pay well.
yeah,
And if you
Yeah.
could have gotten into Alfred Hitchcocker on the
Is he
Twilight Zone,
crazy?
you probably would have
Like,
got
dude,
a
that's where I
paycheck
want
out
to
of it.
be. What? You
Exactly.
talking Twilight Zone? You just what?
Wait, when did you know when their submissions open up, sir?
I don't know. That's what I was saying. Like, you know how to get in there?
I'm going to answer that with my teachers. You know, when they give you those writing assignments, they tell you to write a story, and then you write one about dead babies in the wall, and the guy committed suicide because he kept hearing the screams. And then in second grade, they call a teacher conference and they ask, what's wrong with you? And you're like, did I not do the assignment? I'm so confused. You know, so those are my biggest critics in Catholic school in Cheyenne, Wyoming. The nuns took my book out of the library because I read Alfred
Not
Hitchcock too many
surprising.
times. No, do I hold any aggressions? No, but that's the book behind me on that shelf. You can't take it from me now, nuns. Okay.
It's mine. Like,
About like 20 Alfred Hitchcock anthologies trying to find that one that they took from me. I found
that's
it.
hilarious. And this is the question: what if you criticize because you're a woman and write horror, or the
Either
one
one.
with either one? I haven't been a female. No one probably. I don't really come off where you probably could say that to me. Probably would want to deal with my response. So I really haven't had anybody come at me for the female aspect of it. I have had like some Christians come at me for writing things that I shouldn't, as they put it. Things that I shouldn't. I don't mess with that stuff. Like, no one asked you to be a writer, so it's not like I need to worry about that. But yeah, since I'm a goth Christian, so I'm a goth and a Christian, so it's kind of like a mixture thing. Like, we just accepted that there's darkness and light as well. So they really kind of get up on the fence if you write horror, because they're like, I think I was talking about writing a vampire story at the time. So like when I was in my early 20s, and they were like, oh, I don't mess with that stuff. Like a stranger, a woman that was in, me and my mom was in the store, she was talking, and she said she's a writer, and she's like, oh, what do you write? And I was like, oh, I'm writing a vampire story. She's like, oh, I don't mess with that stuff. Like, mess with what stuff? You act like I'm going to just like put my hands in some people's guts or something. I like literally like I'm writing stories. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I haven't criticized for that. I mean, you could try to criticize me. I'm like, I don't care. Like, but people will say things and think certain things about horror writers in general. To me, like, rather they try to put you down, like Elaine said, put you down for be like, I'm gonna save you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, there is a area for horror. Like, there's plenty of people who like it. There's going to be people who don't. We know it's the down dog, like in any genre, like in video games, in film, and in books. People look down on horror as a genre. They like got bad stuff to say about it. Or they think a lot of misconceptions about it. So it's kind of like if you write horror, you're going to be looked at a certain kind of way. You kind of creepy. Like, why are you writing about people dying? Like, why are you writing about people, things happening to people? Like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to kill these characters. You know? So you're going to get looked at that way. People thinking all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that is true. I do get looks, and I've had some of that. But I mean, I find it as a compliment, actually.
It is. I get happy. Like, oh, really?
Yeah, if people look at me funny, I'm doing my job right.
You are.
Oh, you think I'm horrible? What I wrote is horrible? Thank you.
I did my job.
Like I just posted. I think I posted on Instagram or something coming up for March of the Writers that I'm doing over there, and it says what's a weird goal of yours, and a weird goal of mine is someone to review my book and say it was totally disgusting.
Right.
And I said in the comment, I said horror writers will understand this, and by your reactions, yes, they do.
Yes.
Oh, yes,
we will.
I hope one day to be banned for being just
She's gone too
please
far.
ban me.
Yeah, I have thought about
where
can we read this?
I want to write something and send it to a bunch of churches just to see if I can get banned. Like, oh no, my address is right here if you want to pick it. I mean, like, just saying. I have
Yeah.
donuts and coffee.
She's going too far.
Yeah, although I will say that none of my teachers ever looked at me weird or discouraged me from writing dark stories. So I must have had good teachers.
You did. They
You did.
understood the expression that is there. Like I think a lot of people don't realize the emotional stories you can tell through horror. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
there's a lot of layers to horror. So and honestly, the horror can be teamed up almost with every other genre, in my
Yeah,
opinion. Like it can be done.
Yeah,
yeah.
I would
Well,
say that most genres actually have some horror element in
Yep,
them.
it's like Angela pulled it up. Yep, it's
and
there.
I just going back to what we said about like horror is role play. The reason why I wrote that story about the dead babies and the walls and all that is because we had actually a friend of mine had gone into an abandoned house, and it was supposed to be haunted, and it probably is. Super scary, but the house gave me nightmares and nightmares, and I kept seeing a girl under the floorboards in my
Ooh,
nightmares, and so that was me trying to work through it,
yeah,
as a
true.
second grader.
Mhm.
So I just want to say to like the teachers and stuff, if somebody is writing something like that, instead of letting yourself just be shocked and repelled, think about it. Like maybe ask why. I would have probably really that would have been beneficial to me at that time for somebody to poke in and say, "Hey, why are you writing about dead babies in walls? Have you seen one lately?" I mean, like,
Why are you
do we
getting
need to
that
talk?
Yeah. And Joe says his fifth grade teacher introduced him to Edgar Allan Poe. So
Oh, that's
I like your
awesome.
teacher.
yeah, and everyone who's read his books is also very glad that the teacher did that
I'm a
too. So
big Edgar Allan Poe fan. Love him.
yeah, yeah. I had I read Edgar Allan Poe when I was a kid too. Although I don't remember
Yep.
where I got the book.
My grandmother read it to me like as bedtime stories. So
Oh,
that's
Nice. I like your
awesome.
grandmother.
yeah,
Cool.
she was a witchy one. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
Everybody's got that witch grandmother. That was mine.
yeah, like I'm the youngest of seven kids, and all the my previous siblings they left their books behind, so I raided their stashes. So
Yeah. Oh,
I got a whole
good.
bunch of books that I really shouldn't have read as a kid.
Yeah.
Right. For a lot of stuff early. Yeah. It's always good.
Anyway, so that's in the hour, so I think we'll wrap it up here, and I'll let everybody give them their outro and tell everybody where they can find you and your books again. So we'll start with Elaine this time and go around the other way.
Alrighty. You can find me at Elaine Pascal, written just like my name below, .com. That's my website. I'm also on Facebook as Elaine.Pascal. And I am on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok as at Doc Laney.
And DL outro.
Hello, everyone. You find me, the Mistress of Horror, over on my channel. If you want to look me up, it's my author name, Author DL Tillery, and you can find me at www.authordltillery.com. You'll see all my releases and also coming releases. If you haven't read anything from me again, I do have Fractals out here, which is a short story, so it's not a heavy read, but a very creepy, interesting story, and that's on Amazon. And also The Room Within. I did release these obviously on paperback. They're also on ebook. Some people like to have the physical book in their hand, like I do. But you can find those on Amazon. And if you want to keep up with me and what's going on, as far as my books that are coming out, and learn about more about horror, then you can find me over on my channel under author DL Tillery. Stay scared.
Okay, Angela.
Hi, my name is. Oh, we already did that part. Okay, you can find me at AngelaYSmith.com, and all my socials are linked there. And I've got a newsletter, which is basically a calendar of all the events that we need, open calls, grants, everything like that comes out, so we can know where to submit for awards and make some money off our writing. And that comes out weekly. I really can't think of much else. Just AngelaYSmith.com.
Okay, and this is me. And I'm AF Stewart. You can find me, as you can see there, at afstewart.ca, all my books, all my socials, all my stuff. And this book will be getting a sequel coming out this year, hopefully,
Ooh,
fingers crossed, if I can finish the editing. And it's the fairy tale book I was talking about, Fairy Tales and Nightmares, where,
yes.
yes, where the princes die and the women do horrible, horrible things. Uh, Anyway, so that's me. And I'd like to thank everyone for being my guest. It was a fun panel. We had a great time.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
And
you.
that's it. And so bye for now.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.
everyone.